Did you know there are two different types of ways to print copies of your books? These are called print on demand or a run of a book. And these are very different things. And you're actually going to see traditional and indie publishing using both, but swaying more toward one or the other. So let's break this down. Print on demand copies of your books means you will submit all of your files to the printers. They will approve all of those things. And then as people buy copies, they're printing copies of these books to send out to those people. As they're ordered, they are being printed. Now, the caveat to this is a lot of places will stock some copies. So they'll stock 5 copies, 10 copies, 20 copies, depending on how you're selling. If they know they're going to be making sales, if Amazon is aware that you're going to be getting a lot of print sales, they'll probably keep some in storage on their warehouse shelves so they don't have to wait for it to be printed, shipped to them to then ship out. So they will have small amounts of these print on demands just waiting in warehouses ready to go. But for the most part, and the overall umbrella for this is that they're printed when they are ordered, then shipped out. It takes a little bit longer to get out unless they're, again, on a warehouse shelf waiting and ready to go. But it also costs a little bit more because you're not creating a ton of books, which brings us to runs of books. Having a run of books is usually a number of boxes or a certain number of copies of books. They are all printed at the same time, and because they're printed at the same time without having to switch files or change colors or whatever it happens to be, they're able to print a bunch of them for a lower rate. It's kind of like getting them closer to a wholesale rate or in a bulk rate. So when you do runs of books, you're ordering up front, getting all those copies and then selling them. So let's break this down even further. I said earlier that traditional and indie tends to sway one way or the other. Traditional tends to sway toward the side of runs because they can get a higher volume of books that they can then sell and at a cheaper rate. Indie tends to go print on demand because then they don't have to buy thousands of copies of their books and sell them on their own. So breaking this down even more, when it comes to print on demand, you do not really touch it. It gets ordered through the different websites, printed, and sent directly to those people. Authors can get copies of their own books. They can keep them in their house, in their basement. They can get them for book signings, all of those things, but they're not going to have pallets of books or boxes of books just sitting around waiting to go. If you're ordering a run of books, typically you are going to order thousands of copies or hundreds of copies of those books. You're going to have pallets or boxes sitting around, and then you're responsible for shipping those out. So print on demand is done for you. Having runs of books typically means you're going to have to buy up front a bulk amount of your books, keep them in a box in your basement, and then as you're making sales, you have to go into that box, pick it up, address the labels, put it in the mailers, and mail it yourself. Not always the case, but typically that's how it works. So while you are going to be paying a lower rate to print each book if you do it in bulk, you still have to do the majority of the work, and you're going to have boxes or pallets of books sitting around until you sell them. Print on demand is a little bit higher of a cost because it is going to require more work on the manufacturer's part because it's just 1 or 2 copies at once, then they have to switch to other things. It's not just one and done and they can walk away until things are printed. So it's going to cost a little bit more out of the author or publisher's pockets, but it also requires a little bit less work because they're not having to then be in possession of all of these books and deal with all of the shipping and all of those extra things. So we do have options here. You can pay a little less per book, but pay a lot more upfront for a run, or you can pay a little bit more for each individual copy of your book and not have to deal with a lot of the other stress. For me and for most people, especially in the indie world, but I see a lot of traditional publishers do this as well. They do lean into print on demand, especially if it's not their main titles. For traditional publishing, we will see more of their diamonds of the season get those runs. They get the higher runs. They achieve a second or third run. You guys have heard the conversations, but a lot of them for the second tier in what they are doing that season will get print on demand just so that they don't have to deal with too much overhead when it comes to that. So there's a lot of different ways that we can be doing this. If you have questions on how books get printed, the way that we are dealing with the different book printers, or the decisions you can be making for your traditional or indie author lifestyle, now's a great time to drop those. But I wanted to make sure we had that clear definition of what a run of books are, what a print on demand is, also sometimes referred to POD, print on demand. If you've got those questions, now's the time to drop them. But this is a conversation that's really important. Now, we recently dropped a video where we talked about what happens when bookstores are getting copies of those books and then don't sell those copies, and how they can then return them and whose pocket that comes out of. Make sure you check out that video. But that prompted a discussion on runs of books versus print print-on-demand books. So if you've got things that are popping up in your publishing life, now's the time to drop them. We're dropping daily videos to help you navigate the world of publishing to make this your most profitable year ever. I will see you in the next episode.